Hello, Jasmine. I'm so excited to have you. And welcome to the Business of Impact interview series. So I'm really excited to speak with you. The purpose of this series is to highlight what it truly takes to run a nonprofit organization and what some of those roles actually look like. So can you just tell me a little bit about who you are and what do you do in the nonprofit space?
Yeah, so again, like you said, I am Jasmine Fain. I am a nonprofit and social enterprise strategist, but most importantly, I like to call myself the anti-grant writer because by training, I am a grant writer, but I switched over once I got into the social enterprise space and realized you can combine the tech space in which social enterprise falls under and nonprofit. And so now I teach nonprofits how to create cash flow without grants. And then just a little bit, I am the CEO of ENPWRU, which is a social enterprise, a for-profit social enterprise, but still the same space. Once I broke into that and realized we could use the same funding models for nonprofits, I now teach nonprofits how to create cash flow without grants. So that's a little bit about me. Oh, and a Dallas, Texas native. Yes.
I hear the accent. So what do you love most about what you do?
Ooh, that's a great question. I think that is my purpose, is what I love most. And when it's your purpose, you find the value in having the small conversations with community members. You find the value in, working hard and staying up late because you understand that your purpose is to build for, a kingdom, Yahuwah's kingdom. But most importantly, I like to say my motto in life is that I don't do this for myself, but I do it to make sure others live better at the end of the day. And to have that comfort knowing that whether I host a seminar or, train a nonprofit, that someone else lives better at the end of the day. So that's what I love the most about the work that I do. Yes.
Okay, I love that. So with that, because we know that nonprofit work is, I like to say, hard work and heart work, right? It's usually tied to something that you care deeply about. Most people get involved in the nonprofit space, usually not for the money, but really for the mission. So what would you say is the greatest challenge in your role, and how, if any, did the pandemic exacerbate that?
Ooh, I would say combining the tech social enterprise space plus the nonprofit space. The social enterprise space, when I have to put on my tech hat, really is not pushing for nonprofits to be in the space. There's a few pitch competition accelerators here and there, but when we talk about social impact or social enterprise, if we're on the tech side of things, we're talking about, more of the influencers and art and things in that realm. And so really I have to wear two hats and tell the tech people nonprofits deserve to be in this space. They have the traction, they have the community members. So allow them to be in this space and actually hear them properly. I think with that, the challenge of pushing for the tech space, going into the 501c3 space, is that nonprofits don't know how to pitch or correctly approach the tech space to get money. So it's kind of these divides of, I wear both hats where in my program, Cashflow Without Grants, I teach nonprofits how to pitch, to be prepared to be a social enterprise, but also at the same time, I have to wear my public speaking hat and be the social enterprise for profit that pushes open the doors and say, hey, tech people, these people deserve to be in this space. They have everything you need, and they're probably doing it better as a nonprofit than as a for-profit product could. So.
It's funny that you say that because one of the things that the pandemic exacerbated for me, but was also kind of pushing the fact that nonprofits need to embrace tech even more. And in the accounting space, what I encountered was a lot of old tech, and a lot of executive directors being a little hesitant to move on to what's new, right? So moving from the server to the cloud, right? But in that hesitancy, a lot of them weren't prepared when the pandemic had happened and so many people had to work remotely, right? And so I think that this time has definitely made a light bulb go off to say okay, maybe we need to start doing things a little bit differently, especially knowing that In some cases, you may be cash strapped. If you implement some of these tech tools and efficiencies, it can kind of, save you on cash flow, and then you can get work done a little bit quicker and easier. So I'm glad you brought up that tech piece, because I want more nonprofits to embrace tech.
Yeah, no, even going into COVID, I would say I was a part of my startup, ENPWRU, was a part of a program called Founder Gym. And I can say the one thing they preached to us constantly was that we're about to enter into the fifth industrial revolution, which is technology taking over. And, that was in 2019 when I had that program. So I'm like, okay, it's so far away. Technology is going to take over, fifth industrial revolution. But COVID just pushed it on an earlier timeline. Overnight, we saw tech take over, whether it was, I remember in 2019 through Founder Gym, we were using Zoom. I had never heard of Zoom. I was like, ooh, this is a new platform.
Now everybody using it.
Now everybody uses Zoom, and now Zoom has more competitors than I even think it valued itself at. And so literally we are living in a fifth industrial revolution. That's just the beginning of it. There's more that technology is going to take over. And like you said, if nonprofits don't adjust, and we saw in COVID, nonprofits died out strictly because of tech. No, point blank, period. And so if you do not continue to move, if you barely moved at the beginning of COVID, there's a lot more coming at the back end in the tech industry, in the technology space, that you're going to have to adjust to. We're literally, just like any other industrial revolution, we're in the tech one, the fifth one. Yeah,
I so agree with that. And it's funny because I'm also familiar with Founder Gym. And so I could see why they also were pushing that. And look what happened. COVID happened, and that kind of, people say it like pushed us into the future. And whereas certain things were trending with tech, it's kind of like we just jumped.
Yeah, we went like from trending to like it's here overnight. Like, yeah.
Absolutely. And so you call yourself anti-grant, right? And so I want you to dive a little bit into, why are you anti-grant, and why the push for nonprofits to build cash flow without using grants?
Yeah. So it really started straight out of college. I would say within college, I was already a grant writer, so working in my profession. And so when I graduated, I was like, I'm gonna go be a grant writer full time. I'm gonna do it. And so literally, I think I worked for this nonprofit for 3 weeks, and literally seeing like the funding process wasn't streamlined. It was all reliant on grants, to the point where I had so much stress and pressure on me to win grants as a grant writer. And I knew I could win grants. That was like, I know I can get money, but the pressure that was there, and realizing that was their only stream of income, I said to myself, there has to be a better way. And I went to a conference called Summit 21 under Blavity with Morgan the Bond. And that's where I met Mandela, who is the CEO of Founder Gym. And, her just talking about startups and, this space. I'm like, I've never heard of this space. Like, what is going on? And so during that period of time is when I launched my own social enterprise and startup. And I was like, okay, I am fundraising the same way, and this is the same space, because in ENPWRU, we partner nonprofit programs to underrepresented communities. So I'm like, if I'm over here as a for-profit social enterprise startup, partnering with nonprofits, why can't nonprofits do the same thing and partner with other nonprofits, partner with other businesses, but also pitch to investors, pitch to donors, and gain the same money in equity? And so that's why I became the anti-grant writer, because I saw a better way. I would say thank you to, Blavity and Morgan and Mandela for teaching me and leading me into this space, and giving me the knowledge that I need to not only merge this space together, but excel in the tech and the social enterprise, and really pave the way for something, 501c3s do not know about, and so that's where I got all of this from, being the anti-grant writer, as I like to say.
No, I really love that. And you mentioned the piece about pitching. And I think this term or the notion of like social entrepreneurs, social enterprise is fairly newer. And then also the idea of social impact investing. So I've noticed even VCs adding certain like departments or initiatives of where they're taking a certain amount of funding and putting it specifically into like nonprofits or specifically into these for-profit social enterprises that are serving a specific need, but essentially on the same wavelength as a nonprofit. And so I am totally with you there. And I don't know what it is, but I also know that like, I feel like in the nonprofit space, all you hear is about grants. And having worked internally as like a controller, I'm like, there's a lot more funding out there. Grants is not the only one. And we already know that you said in some cases, be diversifying your funding streams anyway. And I think it's a little dangerous to kind of solely depend on one.
Yeah, no, it most importantly is, without COVID and all this stuff, it's just a dangerous game to play. When it comes to grants, I like to give it in like a lolly. You know, the Tootsie Roll lollipop has layers, and they're like, how many layers can you lick till you get to the center? So I have the same way of describing the nonprofit system. And, you know, anytime that I'm having these interviews, I tell people we cannot talk about the nonprofit industry without talking about capitalism. You know, it's one in the same. And so when you understand that, it's like I say, it's three layers, and like nonprofit founders and their community members are in the center of this Tootsie Roll lollipop. But one layer you have specifically for Black nonprofits is the Black wealth gap. But if you're a POC person and maybe you immigrated in, or you're just here and you are hit by capitalism also, you have a wealth gap also. But because, you know, I'm Black, I study the Black wealth gap most importantly. But, you know, you have that wealth gap. Then you have a lack of social capital, you know, on top of that. And then you have a lack of social awareness on top of that. And then lastly, your communities do not have social capital or social awareness or a wealth, any type of wealth, just like you. So when you're working through all these layers, you also have to understand that nonprofit professionals like us, not like us, but, you know, nonprofit professionals gatekeep. You know, people who have wealth in this nonprofit industry gatekeep. When we're talking about foundations, who we know our industry is at least 90% white-led, gatekeep. So all three of these players are gatekeeping these four systems that I just talked about, and you and your community is in the middle. I tell people, this industry is no longer about breaking every ceiling and feeling proud. I broke through the ceiling. I got the grant. I proved to them that we're the best Black or POC nonprofit. No, it's not about breaking ceilings just for you to reveal that there's another ceiling against you, and the gatekeepers are just playing games with you because they can and they control the industry. At some point, you have to look to the person who's next to you, which is your community members, and your community member, your nonprofits, and say, hey, we're in this together, but what we can do is build fundraisers together. What we can do is partner business to business with each other and create, you know, sustainable resources. Now it's about community-led fundraising, or a term is community-centric fundraising, which I've been following them on Instagram, but it's some of the same similar terms, but I use community-led. You have to look who's next to you and say, how can we make our own funding ecosystem within this system? Because it's just, at this point, there's too many layers to the system. We see every single day there's another layer being added on. And as long as we recognize that the 501c3 is a tax loophole, and therefore any history, any present, and any future that you talk about it, unless something changes, is that it's going to be rooted in capitalism, you got to find another way around it. And understanding, when you understand foundations, who most of the grants come from, are a gatekeeper, and that there is lack of wealth and different things like that, where you stand, you will stop looking to grants for a handout for your main source of funding. You really got to look to who's next to me and how can I build funding and economic stability with them.
That was actually my next question for you was
Yeah.
what is, you talk a lot about like that community-led funding. So I'm glad you went into that, and I'm totally there with you. And I know that like in the height of the pandemic, we also had the murder of George Floyd, and that also shined a light. While it was shining a light on all of these corporations and everyone who's for Black lives, but not really, I noticed that there was also an uptick, and I don't know if you saw it, in philanthropy so white. That whole notion that there's a lot of discrimination within the nonprofit space, and Black-led organizations kind of being pushed to the side as it relates to being able to get funding and the requirements needed to qualify for certain funding. And so I think that goes along with a lot what you were saying about community-led funding, because while some may be a little bit more encouraged now to give to these Black-led organizations, we know that it's performative. And so you can't depend on it, right? So you have to have a strategy as to how you'll continue to consistently bring funds into your organization.
Exactly. And even with community-led funding is just the foundation to it all. I tell people your programs and your fundraisers are the core to your organization. I don't care what anybody says. I don't care if a donor gives you $100,000. If your fundraisers and your programs don't work, go back to the drawing board. Because the thing is, when it comes to, donors, investors, and, in the nonprofit world, we use the word donors, but donors are investors. When you get into the tech startup space, it's angel investors. When you get into the nonprofit space, they're donors. Like, it's the same thing. But when we're talking about donors, investors, and sponsors, these people are always going to be fickle. Yes, we can gain lots of money from them, but you still have to have a backup plan, which is your programs and your fundraisers. And so if those core things to your organization have loopholes in them, you always have to go back to the drawing board, and you really have to attach the community-led fundraising to your programs. The community's already using your programs, so figure out a way how to fundraise with them. And then once you figure out those components, let's talk about an investor. Let's talk about a donor. Let's talk about a sponsor. But I like what you said is the performativeness. And I literally just did an IG Live with Mallory Erickson last night, and we were talking about, when you look for sponsors, donors, investors, look for people who believe in you, and not just believe in your mission, who believe in people who look like you, who think like you, who share the same values like you. Because so many people are going to be performative for the mission, just to say that they gave you money and this is my charity donation, and then they're going to spread it across their social media so that they look good. No, get investors and donors who believe in you and can provide real value to helping you scale your nonprofit to the next level.
Yeah, no, you hit the nail on the head. And I think that's why too, you see a push now more so too for like more inclusive like boards, like, right. So you have this organization that's Black led and supposed to be serving, let's just say the Black interest, but then the board looks nothing like the people that you're serving, right? So it's kind of like, so yes. So we're going to get a little candid. So I don't think people really understand what it takes to keep a nonprofit running. I think that people think that these organizations are just here to serve, right? And they are. But in order to keep the organization running, you have to make money, you have to raise funds, right? And in some cases, you need to be operating like a business because you still have services / programs, right? To deliver that help your community. So I wanted to know your thoughts on that, because I know you speak a lot about nonprofits embracing an entrepreneurial mindset.
Yeah, no, most definitely. You are an entrepreneur. I think it's just so funny sometimes. And when I see it in the tech / social enterprise space is, we call for-profit social enterprises, entrepreneurs, but literally they're doing the same thing, but maybe they just have a product instead of going the 501c3 route as a nonprofit. Like, you really have to embrace that you're an entrepreneur, or I say within 5 to 10 years, you're going to lose at this game. The 501c3 industry preaches a lot on Google and, different quick search realms that, this is a side hustle you can start. Just go out there, apply for your 501c3 application, and you're a nonprofit. No, you're not a nonprofit until you got revenue coming in, until you got solid programs, until you can effectively pitch to me as a nonprofit professional what you're about and your mission, and then I can help you move forward. And all of those steps are the same as an entrepreneur. I also tell people that there's really no difference between a nonprofit and a for-profit. Nonprofits make revenue through fundraisers. For-profits make revenues through selling a physical product. Nonprofits have donors, investors, sponsors. For-profits have donors, but angel investors, they can go through the VC route, and sponsors. When you start seeing the similarities between a nonprofit and a for-profit, and that you can make revenue, there's this myth that nonprofit can't make a profit. No, you can't make a profit. It's just through your fundraisers. When you see the similarities, you realize I have to be an entrepreneur to make this work. And especially if you're a nonprofit who has a stable foundation and you're ready to move into the tech space, move into the social enterprise space, and start pitching, that space, that is a dog-eat-dog space. It's a dog-eat-dog space for anybody doing a startup. But especially if you're a nonprofit, you're like, okay, I see that there's other funding opportunities. I want to go to pitch competitions. I want to pitch to investors. You have to come correct. Don't think you can carry the same nonprofit, we don't make any money, I just want someone to help me mindset into this space, because they're going to chew you up. Like I as a social enterprise get nosed and chewed up all the time, but it makes my alarm, but it makes me stronger. And because I understand I'm an entrepreneur and I understand that space that I'm operating within. And so that's a little bit about that. You have to shift into an entrepreneurship mindset, or you're just not going to survive. There's no fluff, and there's no easy way to cut it anymore, because we're just emerging so quickly at this point.
Yeah, I think for some reason people get so caught up in the nonprofit, that term, not realizing that it's more of a tax status than anything else, right? And so just because you're a nonprofit doesn't mean that you can't make profit, right? And so the idea that you're supposed to run this full-blown organization with no money makes no sense, because in order to push your mission forward, you have to have money to do so. And I think in our space, there's so much of that scarcity mindset that we're scraping, but then you have billion-dollar organizations. How do you think that they manage, right? And so I think we have to get out of that mindset, that when you hear nonprofit, you automatically think like poor, charity, sad. You know what I mean? Like, it's so weird how those are the things that are associated with nonprofits.
Right, because I like to give the example. A lot of people don't know the NCAA is a 501c3. But when we talk about the NCAA, the first thing you think is, oh, they're for profit, they're in corporation. Because look at all the scholarships they give. Look at all the money. They have TV ads. Look at the things they're hosting. But when you boil down to it, they are a 501c3. That is how they're registered. But you can tell the difference in who has the social enterprise for-profit mindset and who has the nonprofit, we can't make a profit mindset. A lot of the businesses that you see are actually for-profits, but they figure out a way how to launch in the startup space and gain money quickly.
Yep. Nope. You hit that on it. So what's the number one thing that you wish people knew about your role and what you do in this space?
Yeah. I would say I wish that they knew that sometimes it takes transparency to really get the truth across about what's going on, and that the truth hurts, but it's what needs to be said. Especially when it comes to creating cash flow without grants and being an anti-grant grant writer, I'm constantly pushing against the normalcy in the nonprofit industry. And just knowing I'm coming at it from a place of love. I'm coming at it from a place of I am proud of my people, but also I have lived too long to see my people struggle in this industry when they don't have to. If it took me 3 months to launch my social enterprise and get it moving, why is it taking a nonprofit 10 years to do the same thing I did in 3 months? And it's just understanding understanding that, I'm coming from a place of love, but this stuff has to be said. Capitalism has to be acknowledged within the nonprofit world for us to move forward and to really unify with each other. And then also that if that's not, like, I'm the type of person, if you can't acknowledge that capitalism is happening, if you can't acknowledge that Black, founders and POC founders are not being funded, and it's not because of, they don't have a mission and this and that, but that there is discrimination to it, I'm just going to go over here and teach them how to create a funding ecosystem within themselves and train them how to play the big players with the tech industry, that the same game you're playing. And then you're going to have competition on the same level as you, rather than you could just give the money to them. And then, but still, I'm going to train them to be your competitors, either or. And so that's just me. We can either acknowledge it and move forward and then continue to be better, or at the same time, we're still going to keep pushing and moving forward. We're still going to bring knowledge and truth and transparency to what's going on. And we're not going to teach the little game anymore of just go get a grant and hand some money down. No, we're teaching the big game of what's truly going on and how to get the big bucks.
No, I'm glad you mentioned that, because I'm in a nonprofit group on Facebook, and there's so many founders who talk about they've been running their organization for 10, 15 years and they're still not being funded consistently, or they still not taking a salary, just different things. And I'm I think we got to get out of this mindset that, this is charity work. And so I don't need to get paid from it. This is hard work, and you should absolutely be compensated appropriately for it. It is still, to an extent, a business, and it takes money for you to actually move the mission forward and to increase your impact. So yes, you need to be getting funded consistently. You need to know what that number looks like for you, right? And you need to make sure that you have the proper infrastructure to support that. So if you need staff, are they supposed to just work for free? I mean, we know that in the beginning, usually you're running the organization with volunteers, but at some point, even that model has to change, because they're not dedicated, solely to the organization. Sometimes you gotta hire, and people have to get paid a living wage, so
off of your nonprofit salary, you just have to, it's your job.
No, it is. And that's the thing. I think people forget that, these people have to live off of this. But my final question is, how can you better be supported in your role? What is it that people who, whether in the space or out, can better support you in your role?
Ooh, that's a great question. That I think I've thought about it, but not thought about it. But the thing that's coming to my mind the most is, one, give us the platform to speak this knowledge to people. I think that's currently in the season that I'm in, the frustration I'm finding, especially in the social enterprise space. Is very tight knit right now. And even I would say in certain nonprofit conferences I've applied for, and I'm told, your information does not apply to our conference. And I'm looking at the speakers and looking at the topics, and I'm like, my information definitely applies to this conference, So give us, especially Black women, I know you and several other Black women on Instagram who talk real truth about the nonprofit industry, but we can't utilize Instagram for forever. We can't utilize our email list for forever. We need the platforms to speak this stuff. And even if it hurts, and it's one of those things where you understand that, we're speaking something that's against the odds. So of course the big platforms are not going to want us, the big conferences are not going to want us to say this thing, because it's going against the status quo. But, it's time for change. Give us the platforms. And then I would say second is, I'm not trying to think. I'm that was a second point. Really fund us. Nonprofits have so much traction. And I'm talking about just the social enterprise space in general, because social enterprise consists both of nonprofit and for-profit companies. Fund us, run us our money. We have the traction, we have the community members, we know where to reach out. We just need the money to literally excel. You will benefit so much from just the many nonprofits that I've seen. These people are founders who this is their purpose work. You can't tell it any other way. In the way they maneuver throughout these communities, literally they were put on this earth to do this and help these people, but they need the money to be able to expand. The nonprofits are the problem solvers. Everything that you're seeing in the world, it could be solved if you funded nonprofits. When we look at COVID, when we look at the Texas winter storm, when we look at, social justice issues and shootings and stuff, these nonprofits, especially BIPOC nonprofits, are the one taking food to families who are affected by shootings and racial justice issues. They're the same ones who are out here protesting and leading, food drives when everybody got unemployed during COVID. They're the same ones providing GED educations. They're the same ones giving students pre-college training so they can get into your college and excel, because that student might have completely failed depending on their experience and their background. These are nonprofits doing that work. Their mom, dad, mentor, and fund them so that they can excel even higher. So that's what I would say.
Yes, fund us. No, I love that. Jasmine, thank you so much for coming on and agreeing to be interviewed. Like, I love your approach to managing not the grants or anti-grants in the space, community-led funding, running a nonprofit with that entrepreneurial mindset. And I know, we initially connected like via Instagram, but it has been such a joy to watch you continue to educate in this space. Please share what is the best way to keep up with you and all that good stuff.
So through Instagram at Jasmine Fain _ and through Instagram, you can subscribe to my webinars. I have a couple of free webinars coming up for the next couple of months. So if you want to watch those about creating cash flow without grants, this is actually the first time announcing it, but I am hosting a Cash Flow Without Grants Summit. It is a 2-day workshop. And so we're doing in person here in Dallas and also virtual. And so those would be several days throughout the whole year. We're doing a whole tour. So if you're like, Jasmine, I need help, I need one-on-one help, it will be in a group setting, but it will be small enough to where you can personally ask me questions, pick my brain if you want to. And so I can understand, what exactly is going on with your nonprofit. And so through Instagram, I have all those links, the newsletter. I just as real as I was in this interview, my newsletters are just as real. So if you want some truth in your inbox, subscribe to all those links, and also www.jasminefain.com. And then ENPWRU. So ENPWRU, we are a marketplace that connects nonprofit programs to low income and BIPOC communities. And so right now we're looking for partners. We're looking for nonprofits to test the product out and to be on the site. So if you want your programs, and also I would say, so you can sign up and register through the listing. So say you post a program and you want people to specifically sign up for that program and keep track of it, you can do everything through ENPWRU on our site. And so if you want to get your program to be spread to more BIPOC and low-income communities, come talk to us at www.enpwru.com. And then we're the same on social media.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I love it. I'm super excited for your summit coming up. I think what I've been seeing more often in this space is like a lot of organizations taking things online, so doing the whole virtual fundraising and different things like that. So that's exciting to see. But I think it's also exciting to see how us who educate in this space can now reach more people because now we're all online, right? So again, thank you so much. I enjoyed speaking with you. I will follow up with you after this with all the details on when everything will be released. Enjoy the rest of your day.
You too. It's so great talking to you again.
Yes, I love it.